just use first names because they're more common than the combination of first and last names. But the first thing we're going to do is just bust through some square roots and see if we can do some speed solving. So I'm a little afraid that as soon as I put this down, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 questions here that all came from the questions that you would have seen from Khan Academy. And you probably already did this assignment, but I just want to do this as a quick review. I'm going to give you 60 seconds, which is like 7 seconds per question, which I don't even think you need that long. I'm going to give you 1 minute to try to answer all of these. All right, and you're just going to write them down on your paper. The reason I'm giving you a whole minute is I want you to write down the square root and the number under it, and then equals what the answer is. Okay? So I'll put this down and then I'll give you a minute. Oh, you guys can't see that very well. All right, go for it. "25 seconds. "10 seconds. All right, now super secret bonus question. If we're only talking about the positives, there's our timer. If we're only talking about the positives, did anyone watch the video and hear what Sal, which is the first name of Mr. Khan, Dr. Khan, whatever you want to say, Sal calls something as something root just the positive one? Did anyone catch what he calls it? It's called the primary root. So we talked the other day about these all having, any square root has a positive or negative answer, but we're only going to write the primary roots down. All right? So this is going to be chaotic, but everybody unmute and let's run through these.
Real quick, Zoe got kicked out. She just texted
me.
Oh,
sorry, she is now waiting to get back in. Thank you. All right, square root of 9 is?
3.
Square root of 16?
4.
Square root of 25?
5.
Square root of 36?
7.
Square root of 49?
8. 10. 10.
Oh, we skipped 9.
11.
11.
And 12.
12.
So wait, we skipped 9. What is 9 squared if we go the other direction?
81.
81. So if we wanted to get this, we could say square root of 81 is 9. Very good. Now, you feel good about yourself right now? You're like, yeah, those were great. Those were easy. Don't worry, I'm about to take that feeling away.
I was just kicked off. Should I write those down?
You don't really have to. You probably did all of them in Khan Academy. So there they are if you want them. We're going to do this again, except now we're going to do the cube roots. Okay? We ready? You guys want to do another minute? See if we can do it in that amount of time? Cube roots.
How about 3 minutes? Because it's a cube.
No! I'll give you 90 seconds. How about that? All right, go for it.
Colin just got kicked as well.
Huh, thank you. I'm looking down and not seeing it. Duan, I don't know exactly when your message came in because in the minute, we are just quickly solving these cube roots, which are tougher than the square roots. Because notice the little threes, they're really hard to see like this. I just know I couldn't show a bunch of these all together. So. All right, cube root of, everyone can unmute if you want, or you don't have to. Cube root of 27.
3.
Wait, no.
64.
4.
And you can double check that by thinking in your head, what is 4 times 4 times 4? Well, this is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. Cube root of 125.
5.
Careful, don't assume that they just keep going up. Cube root of 216.
6.
Yeah, but it seems like they are. Cube root of 512.
8.
Oh, 8. Cube root of 343.
7.
Yeah, there's our 7. Cube root of 729.
9.
Cube root of 1,000. Oh, we did this one.
10.
1331.
11.
1728.
12.
12. By the way, this is 11s are fun to play with. We'll talk more about that later in the year, but the 1331, kind of remember that as we move forward and we talk a little bit about 11s. 1331 makes things a little bit interesting. Or sorry, multiplying with 11s makes things a little bit interesting. I need to clip these notes back in for last class really quickly. Now we're going to shift gears to with fractions and decimals. So guys, this is probably what you've been working on through this week, at least I hope, potentially. And it's not super easy, right? And that's why we want to talk about it together. So if I slide this down for us, I just let Nick in case he texts somebody. Try these. Now, we talked a little bit about at least fractions last time we met in class. I will give you 3 minutes because I know writing these down will take a moment and then solving them will take a moment. I will tell you the fractions should potentially be easier than the decimals. So take 3 minutes. And guys, you know that I'm going to check your notes at some point. If you're not doing what we're asking you to do, please do it. Like, this is not a game. We're all here to learn. Make sure you're focused on what we're doing. So, roots, fractions, decimals, 3 minutes, go. Now, as with most time, you still have time, but as with most math, you want to try to like be aware of patterns, right? And that's why I started, our lesson today with that little thing about patterns. Gotta be almost out of time. 14 seconds. And time. All right. Can anyone give us a refresher, like raise your hand and give us a refresher of how we deal with the fractions? And sorry I made this radical so long, I didn't lift my pen. Zoe, can you tell us how we deal with these things?
You square the numerator and the denominator alone.
Yeah, we essentially take them separately. So we said we can think of it like the radical of 9 over the radical of 100, but you don't have to rewrite it like that. You can just do that as your math. So what's this fraction turn into?
3/10.
Yeah, that is 3/10. I'm going to start just like cold calling on people. Remember that you can pass. You are more than welcome to pass. I just got to see if people are paying attention. Kelly, what is square root of 64 over 121?
8/11.
Yeah, 8/11. I'm making a diagonal on my Zoom screen. Akshaya, what is radical 49 over 81?
7/9.
7/9, because we're square rooting the 49 and the 81 separately. Brittany, what is radical 36 over 169?
It's 6 over something. I haven't figured out the bottom part yet.
Now, I actually like that you said that. This is a fun one. 169. Both 6 and 9 are multiples of 3. So if you think like 3, 6, 9, the square root of 169 is actually 13. So the 6 and the 9 are kind of like a little indicator there. That's the memory trick that worked in my head. But then 196, Cooper, what do you got here for radical 25 over 196?
That's actually the only number that I didn't find.
Do you know the numerator?
It's probably 6. Wait, no, it's 5 and probably 16.
Ooh.
Right? Am I
I don't
right?
know.
No.
Charlotte, what do you think?
I don't think I'm right.
16 feels big.
It's 14. It took me a while to get to the mute button. But
14. So 5 over 14 for that guy. And then this improper fraction, sorry, I got to keep my diagonal system going if this is going to work. Adam, what do you have for radical 225 over 16?
Nothing, because I don't know like any of this.
So you might want to hang out after class. That's why I'm randomly calling on people. So thank you for being honest. You could have just said pass, but you were very direct with me. What we're doing is we're splitting up the fraction, and we're looking at the square root of the numerator separate from the square root of the denominator. And to remind us what this whole square root thing is doing is if we look at the square root of a number like, let's say, 16, the square root of 16 is 4 because 4 times 4 is 16. So when we use this radical symbol asking about what is the square root, it's actually saying if you had a square with area of 16, and if you count my little boxes, I actually have 16 little boxes there in that square, the edge lengths of that square are 4. So the area inside of this square is 16. It would actually be 16 units squared. We would just call it unit squared because we don't know what our units are. But that is how we deal with our square roots, is it's literally asking us if that's the area of the square, what's the edge of it? And if it's a weird number, we'll talk about weird numbers here in a minute, at least hopefully if we have time. Weird numbers don't work as nice, right? If this was square root of 20, or if the area of the square was 20, 4 wouldn't work because it's too small. 5 5 wouldn't work because it would be too big. So certain numbers don't have nice square roots. But Adam, you and I might want to sync up at extensions or at some other point. I think you missed a little bit during class at one point. So we already just talked about square root of 16 on the bottom here would be 4. Anyone know the square root of 225? Just unmute, shout it out.
15.
15.
15. So if we check that, 15 times 15 equals 225. And guys, you can use calculators for this. So if you don't know like most of the squares, my advice is grab a calculator and go through and say, okay, what is 3 times 3? What is 4 times 4? And then we get up to the bigger ones, right? Like 12 times 12, that's 144. 13 times 13, 14 times 14. And I would write these down somewhere just so you start to have a list. Now the other way is there is a button on your calculator that does this. This button right here will square for you. So if I type in 14 and then I hit that little button, it puts in the square symbol and I get that same answer as when I had done 14 times 14. Alternatively, and I'm kind of scared to show the way that the calculator does this for you. Duan, I hope you're still with me. Okay, I can't see your face, so for a second I thought you'd fallen asleep, which I know I'm boring. I just had to check in. Yeah, I get it now. You're calculating. Thank you. I can do the reverse. So guys, I'm a little scared to show this to you, but if I didn't know the square root of 196, the second button on your calculator accesses the green above the buttons. So above my squared button, we have a square root button, the radical symbol, right? Don't use the x root. We'll talk about that later, but that's different. We want the square root that does not have the x in front of it. So I hit second, then that button, the squared button, and it shows up with the square root symbol, and then we can type in the thing that we want to take the square root of. That is another way that we can solve these, but we would like to start trying to memorize them, if at all possible. I got to start a new diagonal. I think this will work. Rachel, can you help me out with the square root of 1.44? And as like I said, guys, if you need to pass, that's totally fine.
It would be 1 plus 0.2.
So 1.2 then?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In a second, I'm going to ask if anyone recognizes the pattern that we can sort of apply. Charlotte, I can't remember if I called on you yet. I don't think so if I'm following my diagonals. I think you helped out Cooper. But do you know radical 1.96? Cooper, do you know radical 1.96?
Yeah, it's like 1.4, right?
I don't know. Is it? Did you do this yet?
It's hard. I didn't get the 1.96. I don't know how to do that one either. I think it's 1.4. I'm pretty sure it's 1.4.
Because you bailed on the 196, which is fine, but that's why I came back to you. If 196 was 14, is 1.96 going to be 1.4? Now, the other reason I picked on you is that it looked like you were playing with something, like you had something like in your frame that I could see. And if you haven't done the problems that I've asked you to do, we should not be playing with things, right? We really shouldn't be playing with anything during the calls. And this message goes to multiple of you because a lot of you, I can only see your head and I can't see what you're doing off frame. If you're playing with stuff during class, you are going to miss learning, and that is a mistake that you will learn from. You'll learn from that mistake, but it probably won't be very comfortable to learn from that mistake. You guys need to focus on us when we're teaching class. It's only 45 minutes a day, guys. Like, that's all we're asking for. I know that I need to try to get you out of here in what, 15 minutes? Yeah, so I got 15 minutes left with y'all. So, what do we think? Have we tried this in a calculator? Is it 1.4? You guys can unmute and just like...
Yeah.
I don't have a calculator.
Yes.
Ooh! To that point of somebody saying I don't have a calculator, actually remind me to come back to that. Let's finish this and then let's talk about the best internet calculator. If I keep going down my diagonal, Hannah, 1.69. Do you know the square root of that?
1.3.
Yeah, right? I was double checking it in my calculator, which makes sense. If 169 was 13, we're kind of off by like 2 place values of the decimal shift, but then our answer seems to only be off by 1 place value of the decimal shift, because 0.13 wouldn't make sense, right? That'd be way too small, and 13 would be way too big. 1.3 works, though. Anybody? Radical 0.64?
0.8.
I was about to say, Maya, you got your hand up. Just unmute and shout it out. What about radical 3.24?
1.8.
Well, this is 1.8?
I think so.
Yeah, it is.
Just checking because, okay, so this was 0.8. This is 1.8. And then
2.2.
2.2.
2.2. So, now that we've talked about how to use our calculator to help us with that, the tough thing is, well, if we don't have a calculator, what are we supposed to do? Well, first off, we can just
Go
play
to the
with numbers.
Desmos online calculator.
Desmos online calculator. So, if you go to desmos.com, it's like my favorite math website ever. Later in your math career, we're going to use the graphing calculator a lot, but under math tools is scientific calculator or 4-function, but 4-function is not good enough anymore. Because we're in middle school, we need the scientific that involves radicals and squares and things like that. Now let's talk about the X root button that we were just discussing. Cube roots are a lot harder, right? Can anyone remind me of when we use cube roots? We wrote it down in our notes last week, or earlier this week, I forget. What about the physical situations that we use cube roots in? Dewan? I can't tell if that hand is new or old. Are you trying to volunteer right now, or no? Take that as a no. Kelly? No, Kelly?
It allows you to take the area of a cube, or yeah, it allows you to take the area.
Volume.
Sorry. It allows you to take the volume of a cube and figure out the length of each side.
Yeah, so we can take the volume of a cube and figure out the length of the sides by using the cube root. So let's say I told you the volume of a cube. So now we're in our notes, right? And I just made this equations involving roots, or you can really just put like root work or whatever you want to say. I need a second binder clip. All right, so if I told you the volume of a cube, and this is actually how we would write that, the volume of a cube, or you could say volume of a cube, but this in the parentheses tells you what we're talking about, is 512. Well, we also know that with a cube, if we allow the side length, so we can say if edge is way better than side, guys. The word edge is much more specific than side, so that's why we're going to start to use very specific vocabulary, so I'm trying to get my focus to come back. So if edge is x, and the comma is often used for like then, so that we don't have to write the word then, volume is x cubed. So what we're actually told is 512 is x cubed. Any questions with what I've written down so far? I need to wait and drink some coffee. So now we're going to start discussing the algebra. So if you don't have the word algebra written down, you might just even make like a little note. the way that algebra lets us solve this, have you ever heard from teachers or anybody this whole, like, if you do it on one side, can anyone finish that for me? If we do
it on the other.
yeah, we got to be fair, right? We have to be equitable, which in math, we do need to be equitable because we're trying to keep things equal. So if I want to get x by itself, my goal is get x. To get there, we can take the cube, not square, so we have to put the little 3 here. Remember, that little 3 is necessary. But if I do it over here, I have to also do it over here. And when we type that in our calculator or check our list, if we've made a list of these, we find out that x would be 8. And of course, I'm missing some labels here. My volume should have had a label of units cubed because volume labels get units cubed. So if you want to make the note, this should have had a label of units cubed. So unit would be like centimeter or inches or miles or something like that. Any questions aside from why won't my camera focus? Which getting it to focus on something close and then trying again is normally what works. Any questions right now? I'm trying to apply wait time while I also check on what I need to go over with you guys. So when you see situations like this, and guys, this is why I ask you to do your homework before you come to class. I use these reports to figure out what we're going to go over. And the cool thing about these reports is I can sort it by the problem that is most missed first. So this obviously is not everyone in the class. Only 4 people got this problem. Very soon on like quizzes and tests, I might assign you all the same problems so that I can just look at, here are these 10 problems that we did. But there were a lot of problems in this bank. Of this problem, though, people struggled with it, so we're going to review it real fast. So if a squared is 6.4, to get a by itself, what we would need to do is take the square, because it's only squared, root of both sides. So what we would write down there would look something like this. A squared was equal to 6.4, but then, and I change colors for work I'm doing on both sides, if we want to solve this, especially using a calculator, we got to put our radical symbol over here, radical symbol over here. Square rooting something that was squared, they cancel each other. They're called inverse operations, right? If you multiply by 2 and then divide by 2, you get right back where you started. If I square a and then take the square root of a, that's the same idea. It's different than just like multiplying by 2, but it's an operation that you're applying, and the inverse is the square root. Well, ignore the decimal for a second. What's the square root of 64?
8.
8. So we're thinking this is probably 0.8. And we could check that. So we're saying, is it? So in our calculator, what we're going to type in is second and the square root button, 6.4. Normally you need to close the parentheses. Sometimes, ooh, uh-oh. Uh-oh. That didn't work. It doesn't always work like what we just noticed on the last page we worked on. So this is why we wanted to go over these problems. You can't assume that a rule applies the same. Can anyone look at why the other ones we just did work versus why this one didn't work, and by the way, guys, if you wrote down 0.8, please cross it out before we move on. That was wrong. We said A is actually like 2.52982, blah, 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 blah. This does not mean repeats. It can mean it repeats. It just means it keeps going. Akshay, do you have an idea of why this worked over here but isn't working over here?
Because before the decimal point was before the 6, but in here it's like right in the middle, so it can't equal 0.8 because when you multiply 2 decimals, the decimal has to move back as many decimals.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Akshay. So why this worked over here is 0.8 times 0.8 creates 2 decimal spots. We had tenths times tenths. So if I jump this down, or actually I'm going to come over here and say y, right, like a bigger question mark, 0.8 times 0.8 is really 8 tenths times 8 tenths, which is 64 hundredths. So if this was 0.64, that would work and get us 0.8, but it's not. Be careful you don't fall in the trap. There's only one decimal place here. It will not work to just become 0.8. It's actually this gross number that keeps going, I think, forever. I don't think that really ends. When your calculator looks like the number ends, that just means it ran out of screen. A lot of times the number did not actually end. So be careful not to fall into the trap. I want you all to try, I lost it, this one. No? Should have planned this out better. This was the toughest one, and that's why so many of us missed it. I don't even know another good one. Well, really, now that I told you the trick, I probably won't be able to trick you again. But what if we did the square root of 16.9? So if I write down square root of 16.9, is this, and I like to put a question above the equals when we're hypothesizing, is this 13 or 1.3 or something different? Well, punch it in your calculator. Charlotte, are you stretching or raising? I don't know what's going on. Kelly, is that still a hand raised? Nick,
I was just stretching.
I can lower it. Nick, is that still a hand raise?
I got the answer.
Ivan, what do you got?
4.1109600958.
Sorry, go again. You said
4.1109600958.
And then it keeps going, probably. Guys, think about this for a moment. Square root of 16. We know that. We know the square root of 16. It's 4. That's a quote-unquote easier one. Not easy, just easier. So it doesn't make sense if I think it's 13 or if I think that it's 1.3, even though those relate to 169 or 1.69, 16.9 is totally different. So please, there should be an alarm in your head when there is one decimal place out here. That almost always means we're going to get a messy answer. When there are 2 decimal places out there, a lot of times it works out nicer. Sebastian, what's up?
Oh, nothing.
What's that, man? You unmuted really quick, but okay. You lowered your hand, so I'm guessing that it was nothing. Yeah. That's pretty much when I'm supposed to end. So, kind of final announcements here. I may or may not be assigning more things for next week. Yeah, I definitely will be, because I did not assign your homework next week yet. So most of you have last week's homework done, almost all of us. If you're one of the ones who needs to go back and bump that score above an 85%, please go back and do that. Remember, you have to click on your past tabs. Did we talk about that, clicking on the past tab? Okay, I saw a couple head shakes no, so let's do it real fast. When you come to Learner Home and you go to your assignments for Math 8, if it's an old assignment, it is going to show up in your past. Even if you did it and did it well or didn't do it well, doesn't matter. It will show up here. If you have less than an 85%, really we're shooting for 90 or higher, but I'll let 85 slide for right now. 85% or higher, or you need to redo it, or come get help from me, right? If you need to come get help, come get help. And then the active tab here will show what is due soon. These are due tomorrow. They're due tomorrow, quote unquote, just so I can look at them over the weekend. If you don't get them done by tomorrow, it's okay. Don't freak out, but get them done as soon as you can, okay? So I know I stack a lot of things due on the same day. That doesn't mean you should be doing them all on the same day. It means you should break them up through the week and chunk them out, get them done, use AO and extensions if you need help. Are there any other questions for the good of the order, which means for everybody? All right, so keep a watch on Khan. Unless you've disabled things, it emails you. Well, you might not be able to get emails from Khan. If you download the Khan Academy app, guys, it will push it to your phone. It will send you a notification when I upload new homework, which I think is really convenient. So at least you're like, oh, they're up there now. I know about that, as opposed to having to check Khan Academy. So thank you all very much. Those of you that I sent messages to, please hang out and just chat with me for a minute. Anyone else who wants to hang out and talk with me in a smaller group, feel free to do that. Otherwise, at 2:40-ish, right, we might need to run to the restroom, but us teachers will be back on in our Zooms at 2:40 for anyone who wants extensions help. So if we talked, or if you need to go see another teacher, please do that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen at this point. I'm going to stop recording.